every one of us, and I can identify with this, we have this voice from
Mhm.
our insecure self, right? That says, wow, was that good enough? Am I good enough?
Mhm.
What am I doing writing a book? I don't know anything.
Mhm.
We have these voices, and the important thing is to obviously to recognize them and hear them and acknowledge them, but then and I like what Tom says at times is to have some reasonable doubt that they might be wrong.
Mhm.
Bill Wilson, co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, wrote in 1952, "If we examine every disturbance we have, great or small, we will find at the root some unhealthy dependence and its consequent demand." Wilson suggested that if we could identify and continually surrender these unrealistic and unrealizable demands, that we may then be able to accomplish what he imagined to be the recovery's next frontier, something he called emotional sobriety. Flash forward 70 years and join psychotherapists and best-selling authors Tom Rutledge and Dr. Alan Berger, who have taken up the mantle of exploring Bill Wilson's new frontier. Welcome to Emotional Sobriety.
Welcome to Emotional Sobriety. I'm the podcast. Emotional sobriety is a large topic, so it's not just this is the podcast. This is where emotional sobriety resides. I'm Tom Rutledge. I'm already having fun, obviously. Here with Patrick Newman, our wonderful producer, and we didn't have you last time we recorded, so I mean it may not show up. I don't know how these things are released, but we've missed you. I don't know if people may not missed you out there, but we've missed you, and we're glad to have you back, Alan.
I was on an airplane coming back from California, flying to
Yeah,
Philadelphia, flying to my now
to your new home. That's right,
hometown, Philly.
Was that the first time you'd been back since you moved?
Yes. It is the first time I was back, and it was delightful. I had a great trip. Los Gatos, the program up there, Embodied Recovery. They're doing some phenomenal work. There's two guys, Michael and Greg, that are the co-founders of the program, and they remind me of myself when I was young. They were so open to learning, wanting to bring in the best they can to the program, and they integrate the emotional sobriety stuff along with Korean Tao. They work with Master Kim, who's a Korean. He teaches Sundo, which is an approach to Korean Taoism. And it's a really great integration because so much of Taoism is taking care of your breath and breathing and being flexible in your body and being centered. They talk about staying centered, right?
Yeah.
All the time. And so I got to do a workshop up there on emotional sobriety, and Master Kim sat in and he got up and shared and contributed to the workshop. And I sat in his, and it was really a really nice experience. And I'll tell you, I'm very impressed with programs like that I see really integrating like some Eastern and Western, philosophies and psychotherapy. And they're doing a great job, man. I hope the program, it's already on the way. I hope they continue to enjoy success.
Well, that sounds wonderful. It's like,
and we had some people show up from our Thursday night meeting, came up to my book. I had a book.
Oh, great.
And some people even signed up for the emotional sobriety workshop. So
good.
3 or 4 people came from the Thursday night meeting to participate in the events up there. And it was wonderful. Our community is growing and active. It's very cool.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I have a fantasy that basically, we get to where we're all traveling freely and can go where we want to go and don't have to worry about all this other stuff that we could do some things where we get to meet a lot of those people in person.
Have a retreat, right? We'll do.
Yeah, I love that group, and I think
having for 3 or 4 days of workshop.
Let's come together, and and then they'll get to know us personally, and then the numbers for that group will just drop off after they really know. And nobody will ever come back to the Thursday group, but it'll be great. So how are you doing, Patrick?
You know what? Today, I just get this rush when we have our Sunday recordings, and I feel I'm able to be of service, and I'm able to kind of use the energy, harness my energy for the power of good, and which is my way of saying that it can be a little dicey around the middle of the week. but my girlfriend's visiting with her cats for the next stretch of time, and we're going to try out couples counseling on Monday for the first time. So very excited about that.
Very
That's so cool. It's like so many people think that's something you do as a last resort. The idea that you do it as a part of maintenance and building and learning about how to be in a relationship is such a powerful thing. That's great.
Right. And I just wanted to say, I really enjoyed our episode last week with just us, Tom. And I'm moving through a lot of my insecurity about my radio voice and performance, and just taking the thoughts in my head and kind of, it's a whole process of getting them, into the show in a way that's digestible and polished for the viewers. And all of this is happening in real time, and it's definitely testing my post-production metal as well. So, but you very rarely helped me with facilitating that, and also helping me get through some hurdles of self-consciousness that I really appreciate. Good. So,
you've done the same for me in a lot of ways, and too. So, but the idea with that is that, I really appreciated you letting me know kind of some of the stuff you were working with, and when you talk about polished, one of the things I think about for what we're doing here is I think one of the coolest things about this podcast is this, it's whatever any one of us might do that somebody would describe as polished. And I'm pretty sure nobody would ever describe anything I ever said in speaking terms as polished, but it's not polished. It's raw. It's like, and I think our conversation our last time is a really good example of that, because I came into that saying I don't know about this subject. I don't know how, and the short version is I told you in a text afterwards, I told you I was emotionally tipsy, wasn't fully sober, and so you drove, and I appreciated you taking me through that, through the content part of that process. And I love the fact that, and this is one of the things I've loved about working with you, Alan, through the years, is that we just very often come up with shit right there on the spot, that we neither one have thought about, or we bring something into it that we put two things together that we've never done. And so that's what that conversation felt like to me. And I love the fact that you and I can do that.
Well, it's the creative process. It was like when I came up on those unusual suspects with Step 8.
Oh, well, yeah.
That was part of that. Grew out of our work together and the conversations.
Right. You can see the light bulbs coming up, it's like, look at this. Yeah. So, but anyway, I enjoyed it too, Patrick. Thank you very much. And I'm happy. I love the fact that your girlfriend travels with her cats, because I'm such an animal person, cat person here. And it's like, cats are great. Every
one of us, and I can identify with this. We have this voice from our insecure self, right? That says, wow, was that good enough? Am I good enough? Is what I do even worth doing a podcast over? What am I doing writing a book? I don't know anything. We have these voices, and the important thing is to obviously to recognize them and hear them and acknowledge them, but then I like what Tom says at times, is to have some reasonable doubt that they might be wrong.
Yeah.
Even if it's reasonable doubt. If you can totally, object, wonderful. If you can say, look, I know you said that to me long ago, and I know wherever you're stuck at, and I'll see that you need some soothing, but I'm not buying into this stuff that I got nothing to say, because I know I do now. But however we deal with that part of ourselves, we are in relationship with it.
Yeah.
And that's what, and in one way, this is the point to pivot on with this focus that we're having, and is now looking at, and I love the awareness. You had one of those this last Thursday when you said, look, up to step 7, we've been looking at the intrapersonal. Our relationship with ourselves and with life and how we deal with it, etc.
Right.
Now we're pivoting to the interpersonal.
Right.
And we're taking what we've learned from our relationship with ourselves and now trying to bring that and use that as a foundation, as a stepping stone, as a springboard into our relationship with others.
Yes.
And I think that was really, I loved how you framed it with that. That was one of those.
Thanks,
that was one of those moments that you're talking.
You're right. You're absolutely.
God, I just realized
I did. I just realized that's the moment. I go, oh, I get. Oh, it's fun when you're teaching, when you're supposedly teaching something, and you realize you're going like, oh, I just got this. It's like it's. But I tell you what, that's one of the things I also just say as an aside. And I'll use this as my check-in today, just because it's just a good personal note about why I love doing what we do. Is staying that fresh and staying that involved in the process, continuing to be like those two fellas that you talked about with the program that you just came from, being the beginner's mind. It's always learning and always wanting to learn and stuff like that. And what I can say is that's a big reason. There may be a couple of others, but that's a giant reason that I have not experienced burnout in my career. It's like I experience being tired and worn out and needing to take breaks and stuff like that, but not burnout for the career. It's like, and that's one of the things that you and I have recognized. That we actually talked about that early on when we were just doing the workshop every 2 years, about just how much more fun it was to interact and to play with each other while we're doing it, we're just always finding different ways to do it, to keep it alive for us, so that we can still be excited about teaching it.
Yeah, you put your finger on something, and I think there's a couple different things. I do think because we are also of the beginner's mind, and this, you and I continue to learn. I mean, absolutely. I'm a lot more aware of things, knowledgeable in the time we've spent together during COVID. You stimulate me to think about things. I know it's mutual that you experience something very similar. I hear, Patrick, it means a lot to you, our getting together, and you've got a ringside seat at all of this action that takes place here, which is fantastic. I had that with my mentor, Dr. Kempler, for years, just watching him do demonstrations, sitting on countless talks. I mean, I learned and I absorbed so much from that experience.
I suspect that there will be a moment I'll look back and be like, oh, this saved my life somehow. I just have to get the vibe.
Well, it's a funny thing, because I never fully appreciated the opportunity. I mean, today I'm so grateful, but I never appreciated the opportunity of what I was walking through when I was walking through it.
We value insight so much that we actually slow our own progress down by overvaluing that conscious mind and thinking I have to have the insight, when in fact, this is where and we say it's all in the program too. When we hear it, it's like we act our way into these things. We don't think our way into it. It's like in the insights, we'll have insights, and then we got to translate those to practice. And when we do that, but like what Patrick's saying about, I'll bet this will be different when I look back at it later, and it will be. It always is. We can't tell this story now. We'll tell, if you want to hear an accurate story about what was going on in September of 2021, then talk to us in a while, and we can all tell a little bit about that because we have more context. Yes. But the idea is don't wait around for the insight. This is, go back to words from the program. Do the next right thing.
Well, look, we are going to pivot into, we talked about that the first 7 steps on the Thursday night meeting, we're focusing on the intrapsychic and the intrapersonal, and now we're focusing on the interpersonal. And this topic here that we've started a discussion of is so critical and so essential to emotional sobriety. It really, in some ways, we could say it's at the heart of the matter. Right. And why is that so? Because I think there's nowhere else that our expectations about how things should be show up so poignantly at times is that in terms of our relationships. Absolutely. And how what happens in our relationships, how we function in our relationships, how we react to what's going on in our relationships. And so, it's really so critical to use the experience we're having to be able to learn from this. And, that's one of the things I'm going to say next week when we start to dig more into step 9, is that one of the things we're learning in step 8 and 9 is to stay closely connected to our experience. And I want to talk about that in terms of this issue about not taking things personally. Now, it may seem strange to say, well, how can I not be connected to my experience? I'm living it. But as we've talked about, we haven't lived it. Many of us have been in a trance, and we've been asleep at the wheel. We haven't been living it. We've just, been on, automatic pilot, where people criticize, modern man and woman as automatons. It's just, just caught in the big trance and doing what we're supposed, going to work, paying our bills, consuming goods, buying more goods. I mean, and that we're just caught in this, what do they call it? The rat race, right? And then we're on this hamster wheel, man, just trying to run as fast as we can. And at some point in time, we get off the wheel and say, wait, and just like you were saying, Tom, what have I been doing? I've been running on this wheel for years. And I never even asked myself if I want to be on the wheel.
Right. Well, and in terms of what you're saying about taking things personally is you saying not being, thinking, well, how could I not be? I love that. How could I not be connected to my experience? Well, but it's what experience are you connected to? Because so often what we find is that we're so habitually connected to the stories we have told ourselves, or all the stories, these little, and very often, not always, but the saboteurs in our head have told us about it, that put us in a certain role. And so if we're like a victim role, it's like, then we don't get a chance to learn something from an experience, because we just feel that, I've been hurt again by this person. It's like, okay, well, first of all, I always tell my clients that if the word again is coming up, you want to pay attention, because there's an opportunity for you to ask the question about, how am I the common denominator in my pain and discomfort in relationships? And it doesn't mean other people get off the hook, but it's like, how am I making myself at least more vulnerable to these kinds of things? And so it's the examination. It's what you said was, you use the term using the relationship. And it's like, a lot of times we use that, I can say, well, that sounds kind of hard, but it's like, no, it's alert. These are learning opportunities,
right?
Learning opportunities. Another phrase you use a lot, like learning opportunity for searching for new possibilities. Yep. It's like, and so, you're connected to your experience, but let's get closer to it, and you're going to find out there's a deeper experience beneath that sort of that habitual experience.
And we could describe recovery, based on what you're saying, which I totally agree with, as now a restoration, a recovery of the ability to learn. You see, in one thing that stands out so clearly. I mean, I remember being in graduate school, and I was writing a paper, personality. It was a graduate seminar in personality. And, the issue I was writing about, the whole focus of this paper was, is there an alcoholic personality? Because we hear that all the time, that's an alcoholic personality. Well, I know what people, I think, are saying when they say that they see common characteristics, right? Like our self-centeredness and stuff. But there was no alcoholic personality, meaning that introverts can become alcoholic, extroverts can. Somebody high on the psychopathic deviant scale can be an alcoholic. Somebody low on the psychopathic deviant scale can become an alcoholic.
Everybody's welcome.
Everybody's welcome. Somebody that's got high anxiety, somebody that's got low anxiety.
Oh, exactly.
People that are depressed or not depressed. See, we don't discriminate.
I'm thinking we're going to need Patrick for this one, but I think this is going to have to be a rap song. It's like.
Well, I was just thinking psychopathic deviant. That's like an elite designation.
Look, young people become alcoholics. Some people drop until they get in their 60s, and they have late onset alcoholism or addiction. I mean, it's an amazing.
Dumb people, smart people.
Now when you go on that dimension, you can have a high IQ and you can have a low IQ. You can be emotionally intelligent, emotionally unintelligent. I mean, you can be sensitive, not sensitive. I mean, it's remarkable. Or like you said before, we can fall out of one side of bed. You can be arrogant, or you can have negative arrogance. Right?
Yeah.
I'm the biggest piece of shit in the room.
That's right.
I mean,
somehow I'm special though.
That's right. It's always,
it's like,
and but here's the wonderful thing that I discovered when I wrote this paper is the thing that differentiates us, but I don't think as much so now. If I read that paper, I'd say it different. But the thing that stood out is that alcoholics / addicts, because alcoholics are, addicted to alcohol, which is a drug, but addicts do not learn from their experience. And that's why it's so common you hear in the program to say, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing. We say expecting different results. But I say better results. We don't expect different. We think they're going to be better this time around. And that's the disconnection, talk about.
Right, because our delusion there is that we are learning. It's like that's because that's exactly
I'll just not drink after. It. I won't drink before 5. That's what I'll do.
Right. One of the things I teach people, like especially family, about stuff like that is that after a while you think we're simply just bullshitting you all the time, but and by the way we can, but those lessons that we think we learn. When we say never again, even if it's something as silly as never again, that brand of tequila, I actually think I'm learning, I mean, how many times we heard this stuff? Well, I just need to drink beer, not hard liquor. That's the thing. It's like, I mean, those are sincere, beliefs that we learn these things. We think we've learned what we need to learn. And it's like, and then that's the difference. You're right. That's the difference between an alcoholic and a non-alcoholic, because the non-alcoholic, somebody who just experiences alcohol abuse and has consequences for it, they actually do learn those experiences, make changes, and then hold on to them. We have the same insights. We make the same decisions, and then we find then the lawyer in our head, which is the denial, finds a way to talk us into getting back. For me, usually by noon the next day.
That's right. No, it's so true. Now, when I said I would probably modify that, because I do think that if you're going to emotionally mature, and I think this relates to emotional well-being, it's so important to pay attention to your experience and learn what you can from it. And that's what we're promoting with emotional sobriety, right? Is that we're saying, God, if I pay attention to when I get upset, or if I pay attention to taking something personally, there's a wealth of information available to me if I'm willing to open myself up to what it means and start to unpack the experience. See, and that's what we're promoting, is if you stay in close contact with your experience, and what do you call it? Being vulnerable. That's another way to think about it. If you stay in close contact and are willing to be open to what it's telling you, you will start to see who you are and who you're not, right? That's the whole thing. And I love what Don Miguel Ruiz says, because before we started today, Patrick commented, Alan, in this chapter, you quote him a lot. And I do, because he was the first person that I could find that really spent a whole chapter on talking about stop taking things personally. In his book, The 4 Agreements, his second agreement is don't take things personally, and stop taking things personally. And he goes into it. And one of the things he says, he calls it what creates the dream of hell. And I love the way he phrases things. What creates the dream of hell is our personal importance. That we think that everything is about us. So when we start to think, well, what is it that goes on? What is the origin of taking things personally? Well, it's because we're raised to think about that everything that happens is about us. This is a culture of narcissism. And whether it's narcissism in the arrogant type that we talked about, or the negative arrogance that Tom talks about in terms of turning things around on you, and now it's all about you in the negative way. We all take things personally in this society that we live in this culture we live in. And that's the setup, because as soon as I take things personally, I'm looking at what does that person's comment mean about me?
Right.
Dr. David Snarch calls it a reflected self-image. is we see in somebody else's behavior, we think the image of what they think about us. So instead of seeing it as who this person is, we see it as how this person feels about us. So back to personal importance. Of course, it's all about me. What's that joke? You're at dinner with someone and, the narcissist is sitting there. Well, look, I've been spending the last hour talking about me. Enough about that. Tell me what you think about me.
That's right. That's the Bette Midler line.
Let me have you talk about me for a while. Right. But we do this. We laugh about it and we joke about it and we say these things. But the truth is that we are constantly on the lookout for approval or disapproval.
Okay, so tell me, say the term again. The self-reflective.
Reflected self-image.
Now, who is that says this?
Dr. David Schnarch. Now, I can only imagine the abuse he got growing up with that last name.
Yeah, he was.
Hey, Mr. Doctor. Hey, David Snatch. Right? I was a hamburger and a cheeseburger and burger with this and burger with that. But David got it too. I can tell.
Yeah. Well,
a reflected self-image.
One of the things we learned, and this is one of those really process-oriented things as opposed to content, is in growing up, and this is not to disparent any particular thing about parent. Don't want parents to take this personally, but it's like the idea we actually, that's one of the ways we learn that we figure out who we are is the mirror. The parent is the mirror. And so the idea is, and one of the things you've talked about in that is talking about, even very positive reflections back to your kids can still be about yourself. Right. Without you knowing it, as opposed to, and you talk about making that extra effort to make your reflection back to your child about them. So it makes sense that we also grow up learning to create our self-image according to this reflective process. Right. And so that's where we learn to look for who we are as opposed to looking inside first.
Yeah, right. Because if my sense of self depends on your validation, right, what we call other validated self-esteem, then of course what you're doing and how you're behaving becomes so critical to my experience of myself. Yes. Because I am so emotionally dependent on what you're doing in terms of my feeling about myself. Mm-hmm.
Well, let me say this here, because this really brings it home for me, because that's easy. That's easier. My experience is it's easier for people to get who can look back at their families and realize they got a lot of negative crap from their families, or they got neglected and didn't get information. But it's confusing for people who did not get, and I'm one of these people who did not look back and find people said negative things. I did not get anything negatively reflected back from my parents. I got quite the opposite. I was the pedestal kid. My siblings were all pissed off at me because I could do the same thing they did. They would get in trouble. They would just laugh and say, "In Tommy, funny and creative," and it's like, build a little resentment with that kind of stuff. But one of the things I've told people for a long time is you may envy the person on the pedestal, but it is still what you are still learning is conditional. Is like what you're learning is, without even knowing it, you're learning that if I am not all these great things, then I have no idea who I am. I am nothing. It's like, so the idea is no, this, and so that's the thing. It's like even though it's positively reflected back, it's still not about me. It's about what response I can get from other people. Exactly. And I was so addicted to that.
Both sides of that. So if you didn't get that, then you're looking at other people, in hopes that you might get it, but you know what I mean? But still, it's still other validated, because now you're craving it, right? My God, I never got it. And the other side is,
I live in total it's unconscious at first. I live in total fear of losing it, because I don't have the capacity inside myself to you use this term in this chapter. And it's, one of my favorite phrases of yours is holding on to myself. At that point, I don't even have a self to hold on to besides beyond what other people are feeding back to me.
Yeah.
When I hear stay with the experience, I hear stay with the pain.
And I think what I was going through in my addiction was completely contrary to that. I was just refusing to stay with any grief that I was feeling, any sense of pain or loss. And what that did was it really that's towards the end, I was like, I'm just really not present at all in this thing of life.
No, you pointed out something so important, Patrick. We talk all the time about the biological or genetic, predisposition to becoming an alcoholic and an addict. But I do think that there are also these cultural or societal or psychological setups, like, life is about not being in pain, right? That life should be that life shouldn't be difficult. It should be easy for us, and we shouldn't have any pain. We should be able to zip through life and feel good all the time. So then we get obsessed with these things, and boy, does that feed the addiction or what?
Well, and the other piece that happens is if we're not expressing our pain, especially at a feeling level, at an emotional level, emotions don't exist in time. It's events that create them, do, but emotions stay with us all the time. So they're either expressed or not expressed. They're either processed or not processed. So that basically, when Patrick, tell me if this fits for you, but it's like by the time when you're into your addiction and you're avoiding the pain, it's like you're not just avoiding the pain of the day or the week, whatever. You're avoiding this constipation of all this pain that has stored up inside of you. So the idea, that's one of the things I think that as therapists that we and support people in recovery do for people is it's almost like we're kind of a midwife or something where we're saying basically stay with it. And we're there to say it's going to be worth it. There's something really good on the other side, because part of the reason that you don't do that when you were where you were, Patrick, is where's the motivation? No, is anybody giving you the information that says, well, by the way, there's something really wonderful on the other side of this pain?
Yeah.
Right. There's no information being transmitted in that state. Yeah. And,
so the most intelligent thing to do is to avoid it. It's actually the smartest move given that's the best decision given what you have at that time.
Right. And I think this emotional sobriety thing is about sitting with it and learning it and, growing. I was calling it growing the container of self.
I like it. I like that.
And I'm glad that we just include that in the fine print, though, when it comes to getting people sober, because if they knew that they'd have to be sitting with a lot of pain on the other side of that, I think there are fewer people would be willing to take the leap.
Oh, one of my little nutshells says, just because you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel doesn't mean it's not there. Right. And I'll use the image. I'll say that if I'm sitting and talking to a client, it's and this obviously this only works when somebody you can build some trust. But I'll say, like, imagine you're in a tunnel and it's just pitch black ahead. You can't see anything. So where's the motivation to move ahead? I'll say, but if you can hear my voice, I want you to just keep coming to my voice. Because what I describe to them is I'm standing at a 90-degree turn here, a right angle turn, and I'm saying, because of my experience before with myself and with other people, I can see the light at the end of your tunnel. There are times where we can see it for each other. Yeah. And it's like, just keep coming to my voice, you will see it. But what I'm asking you to do right now is just trust me that I see it. And that's hard. That's a hard trust, but it's most of us have stories that we take that metaphor and look back at it and go like, well, no, there have been some people that I have done that with. I have decided to trust this person and go, but because how else will we find the motivation to go through the pain? Because going through pain for its own sake, fuck that.
Yep. Yeah. I'm pretty secular, but, fear and faith, I do believe that those are the two polarities. And, yeah, I've only ever gotten somewhere good when I'm operating on faith. And yeah.
Oh, that's
I just wrote down a little thing as you guys were talking, which goes to the heart of the matter that we're talking about. I says, in life, we are either coping with our emotions or being lived by our emotions.
Yes.
It's
yes.
one or the other, right? We're coping with these things, and that's what this not taking things personally is about. We're learning how to cope with the feelings we're having instead of being lived by them. When I'm
specifically consciously coping.
That's right.
It's like because the idea is all these other things are coping mechanisms, but it's like what we're doing is we're this is that place where I always say we don't control a lot of things, but we are always in charge. And so what you're saying is, I am going to be aware. Well, it's what you started off with is are you in touch with your experience?
Yeah. Are you close? Are you staying closely connected to your experience? But just stay with this for a minute, Tom, because what you're saying is right on. See, we've talked about before is that human beings, we are always striving for wholeness and completeness. There's no question about it. I mean, I love what you even said is that somehow the universe is even going towards that, is towards, now trying to find some way to get complete, right? And holiness. It's so funny we use that word that's connected to being whole, right? Holiness, right? In terms of talking about religions and spirituality. Well, even in my reaction to my emotions. So let's say Patrick says something, I take it personally, and I try to now, fault Patrick for what he said instead of coping with the feelings I'm having. I'm going to blame them on him and try to get him to change his mind. I'm trying to take care of myself through that manipulation, through trying to now get Patrick to do things the way I think he should do them so I don't feel uncomfortable.
Right.
Patrick, you shouldn't have said that. That's not sensitive. You're not respecting me. Whatever unenforceable rule I lay on him to try to get him to do what I want. But in this chapter, what we're learning, instead of trying to change someone else to do what we want to do, we learn to cope with the feeling that we're having. God, I took that personally. What is that about? That's interesting. So we bring, and we've been talking about this a lot, and I love it, Tom. The antidote here, a part of the antidote, part of the ingredient is curiosity.
Yep.
What is going on that I'm taking this so personally?
Well, in your book, I'm looking at your book, and it's like one of the little lines that you have in the black squares. It says, because it fits exactly what I was thinking before we started. On page 123, instead of taking what others are saying personally, we need to ask ourselves, what am I learning about this person? And then the thing I made the note in the margin that says, and exactly what you said, and what am I learning about myself?
That's right. That's right. See, that's the thing here. So I'm learning that, my God, I was dependent on you for how I feel about myself, and I'm letting you define me.
Right.
What happened? How did I get to the point where I've shifted my emotional center of gravity to you? How did I give that to you? What makes me, abdicate that and put it in someone else? See, questions like that, we call these making the right inquiry. Not into why are you such an asshole, but why am I so reactive?
Right.
I mean, that's the right inquiry.
Well, and we're the common denominator. It's like when we, that's one of the things that, how often are you surprised sometimes by, and I'm sure it's been us at times when we haven't been aware of it, but by somebody you talk to that basically is to tell you one story after the other about how they get hurt or mistreated. But they're very similar stories. And it has literally not occurred to them that they're the one that it keeps happening to. It's like, it's not that this person that is hurting you this time is the one going around hurting everybody all the time. Maybe that's the case sometimes. Some people are just assholes, but that's where what you want to learn about that person is to stay away from them.
It's so important to not take it personally. If you're dealing with an asshole, that becomes a pure survival.
Oh man, that my friend is a simple but really powerful thing to point out. It's like the idea is he's such an asshole, and go like, well, I love that response. I'll look for an opportunity to use it to go like, all the more reason to not take it personally.
That's right.
All the more because reason. What you're saying is he's saying it because of who he is, not because of who you are.
That's right. That's right. And that unhooking, see, that's the word phrase Bill Wilson used in his letter, unhooking these things. That's unhooking ourselves, right? that's differentiating ourselves in a very, very, very good way. So this becomes so important. And you know what? Look, last Thursday, we were talking about what we're learning in terms of relationships, and that the formula that we used to operate was, if something's wrong, I try to figure out, that, who's the source of the problem. I focus on blaming. So I'll blame myself or you. If I blame myself, then what's wrong with me that the person is treating me this way? If I blame you, what's wrong with you that you're treating me this way? Emotional sobriety is about dumping all of that. It's like, that's all irrelevant. Doesn't matter who's to fault here. The issue becomes is, what's going on that I'm taking this personally, and how can I unhook myself from what you're doing? How can I differentiate myself? And so that becomes the important thing. And what we were seeing in steps 8 and 9 is, we're looking at what's going on with us first, and then what we can do to change it. Now, we're not looking at what's wrong with us in the sense of I'm responsible for this. We're looking at what's wrong with me that I'm taking this so personally. That's what we're learning here.
Well, it's also, this is where I play with semantics, but I think it's very important to consciously make a distinction for ourselves with the word blame and the word responsibility. Blame is a way of dropping your anchor, period. It's like, it just drops your anchor. And if you're in a boat, you ain't going anywhere, or if you're, even if the water isn't deep enough for the anchor to hit the bottom, it's going to slow everything down. But responsibility is about forward moving. Yeah. It's like, then we can even use the same language. I don't think we have to get caught up and say, oh, okay, well, I can't say I did something wrong. Because I want to pay attention to when I do something what I think is wrong. Maybe it's better to say I could do this better this way. But there are times where I go like, no, that was a mistake. I want to be able to acknowledge my mistakes. But the feeling difference of responsibility and blame is enormous. It's like because you actually have better. It's one of the reasons I always tell people I feel really, really great about my ability to have humility. We've laughed about the idea that I'm arrogant about my humility. It's like, but the truth is, it's such a powerful thing. Is that I know that I can feel good about myself in terms of how I might do better tomorrow, even if I don't know what's to come, because of that. And somebody mentioned that in the Thursday group too, is the little nutshell that I came up with recently that says, when I don't know what to do, I know what to do. And it's like, and that's one of those things, when I don't know what to do and I know that something's about me, I know I need to stop. I need to reconnect, like you're saying, to my experience. Yeah. And everything is information is one of my favorite lines that I repeat to clients all the time. Right. Everything is information. And how can you use that information to learn and to keep moving forward?
Yeah, that's right on. That is right on, man. Right on. So look, what I'm feeling at this point in time, or what it seems to me, is that, we've set this up nicely. We've teed things up. Let's make our next podcast about, now, how do we deal with taking things personally, and how do we unpack that whole experience and unhook ourselves? So let's focus on that next time, Patrick.
Actually, that's good. Actually, taking it somewhat out of the abstract and putting it into the practice.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, that's great.
Let's just do that. Let's focus on that in our next podcast, and we'll see you guys at our next show.
Sounds like a plan. Until next time.
Till next time.
Peace out.
Tend your life. Tend your myth. Cultivate your narrative with whomever you're with. Then with glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me. It ain't a crime to be a human. Never be ashamed to be yourself. Rest assured that whatever you're doing will entertain me like nobody else. So here's to us, my old friends, until it's time to drink the wine and break the bread again. With glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories. Bring your stories back to me.